All right. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate them. Rishab, do you want me to kick off or do you want to kick off? Just let me know.
Are we live?
We are live.
Yeah, we are.
All right. So then, thank you. I appreciate everybody calling in. I'm Carlos Sousa. I will talk about myself here quite a bit for the next half hour or so, for the next few minutes, and so appreciate everybody calling in. Really, I appreciate it. Excited to be here. Both IEEE as well as the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers were a very big part of my early career. So I'm excited to be re-engaged here. I hadn't been in one of these meetings for a few years, so excited to be here. As a matter of introduction, so again, I'm with Microsoft. I'm a cloud data platform and analytics manager. I wanted to start with a quick who am I from a personal standpoint, and so I added kind of 6 pictures that are going to help you understand a little bit more about me. I've got a wife. I've got 2 beautiful daughters, 3 years, 1 year old. So 3 year old, 1 year old. I actually just came back from a week of vacation in Mexico, in Cancun, with my wife by herself. So we were very happy to get some alone adult time. It was fantastic. And then I just kind of added a couple other things. So my big passion, I'm a frustrated baseball player. That's what I always wanted to be, a professional baseball player. I've got a hometown team back in Venezuela called the Tiburones de la Guaira, which be like the sharks in the US, and it's a big passion of mine. And I really lived in 3 major places. I'm from the coast in Venezuela. I've been in the US for 10 years at this point. I spent the majority of that time in Indiana, specifically working at a company called Cummins, and we'll talk more about that. And then after that, I've been living in Texas for 3 years at this point. So again, that's just a little bit about me from a personal standpoint. And I actually wanted to do a quick poll. And I don't know, Rishab, you let me know if we can get anybody to type. But I do want to take a second and kind of do a quick poll here. I would love for you to put in the chat window, in the comments, just your name, your major, your hometown. I want to get a very quick poll of, who we have on the call, how many people we've got on the call, or where you're from, what your typical majors are, just so that I can calibrate as I talk through this. So I'll pause here for a couple seconds. Name, major, hometown in the comments chat window. Reach out. I'll pause for a couple seconds and let me know if you see anything, okay?
All right. So I see someone named Anirudh Chawla, and he is an electrical engineer from Austin, Texas.
Woo! Austin.
And we've got another one named Austin G. He's studying computer science, and he's from Orange, Texas.
Nice.
Very cool.
I love it. One more.
Christian Murmo. Christian Murmo studying computer engineering, and he's from Dallas, Texas.
So we've got a bunch of computer engineering, electrical engineering majors, which I guess is expected if we're in IEEE, but that's awesome. I've been from Microsoft. I love that. That's the kind of people I love it. It's fantastic. So thank you for that, Rishab. I appreciate it. So really what I want to do, I only have like 3 slides. I want to make this, as interactive as it is. If there's any questions, just put them on the chat window, put them in the comments. We'll talk. I'll be happy to make this more of a discussion and a Q&A more than a presentation. But I did have 3 slides that frankly have helped me throughout my career. And before I dive into the tactical of my careers, the different roles I've got, how I got to where I got, I would say for me, the biggest thing in my career is I've got what I call the VIP framework. And the VIP framework has become pretty much the North Star for every career decision that I've made in my 10 years of career. And what the VIP framework is it's really 3 different parameters. Okay. 1, every career decision that I make, what I'm looking for is first and foremost, I want to increase the personal value that I've got and that I bring to the table for my customers, my team, my company. What this could look like is I'm taking a role because I want to learn something I don't know, because I want to expose myself to a skill set or a type of situation that I don't want, that I have never had. Ultimately, what this means is I'm always looking for me to stretch myself, to get myself uncomfortable, to drive even more personal value to the people around me. So every career choice that I've made so far, it's really how can I become more valuable to my people, to my customers, to my organization. The second piece that I'm always looking for is from an impact standpoint. I'm always looking to increase my impact. And that could mean if I'm leading a 2 people team, I want to lead a 10, 15 people team. If I have a $250 million business, I want to lead a $500 million business. But the key is I'm always looking to increase that impact and achieve a bigger scale, touch more lives, make a bigger difference. And then finally, I'm always looking to be more positive. I want to be a force for good. I want to empower others to achieve more. So every time that I'm going through a kind of an internal career assessment where I'm trying to understand, do I want this role? Should I go for this role? Should I not go for this role? What I always go back to is, how is this going to help me become more valuable? How is it going to help me have a bigger impact on the people around me? And how is it going to help me empower others to achieve more? Once you have a very clear framework for what you're looking for in your career, you're not thinking about the next role. Next role starts coming your way. But you got to be clear on what that North Star is. And ultimately, I always summarize, I'm in sales at this point, right? So for me, this is a bigger thing, but this would apply if you're an engineer, any point in the organization that you've got. Ultimately, my goal is I want to be the difference between my company and our competitors. All of us in this room right now, or in this call right now, we're going to at some point be engaged in some level of technology. That technology could be, building microprocessors, building chips. It could be selling Microsoft. It could be doing field service engineering for an engine company. Whatever it may be, most of technology is eventually going to become commoditized. When things become commoditized, the difference becomes the people. So for me, it's very important for me to build this VIP framework, because ultimately I want to become the difference. I want to become the difference that tilts the balance in my direction versus the competitor's direction. That's a little bit of kind of what my career, my North Star for my career choices looks like. If we get into the details, from a career journey standpoint, I really, back to the VIP framework. For me, growth has always been the goal, and for me, growth is not a title. Growth is not necessarily even more money. I've taken roles where I've made less money than I made in my previous role, but I was always looking to grow in one specific dimension. So just to talk to you a little bit about my journey, I started my electrical engineering career in Venezuela. I transferred to FIU, Florida International University, in 2009. I graduated in 2012. The Society of Hispanic Professional Engineer and the IEEE chapter were huge. At that point, think about a guy from Venezuela, zero experience whatsoever in the US, zero experience in the industry whatsoever. It really was the exposure I had was based on my leadership roles in these different organizations. So I think, number one, that was a huge part for me. There's always a way for you to build. There's always a way for you to grow. There's always a way for you to improve your resume, even if you're not full-time hired anymore at this point, even if you're not in the industry yet. When I think about my first job, I've been working in sales for as long as I can remember. I was lucky to grow in a family where my dad owns a business, so I've worked at that business, frankly, for as long as I can remember. I've been going to a hardware store, selling to people, talking to people, messing with things with my hands, and it gave me that appreciation for customers first. I'm customer obsessed, and here's how you can help customers solve their issues. When you fast forward to my time in college, my first internship was with Caterpillar. And in that internship, my very clear goal was, I want to understand what it is to work in the US. I had never worked in the US. It was a technical marketing role, not at all relating to engineering. There were a couple engineers, but most of it were business people. But it gave me what I was looking for. I understood how business was done in the US. After I graduated in 2012, I actually found my first full-time job at Cummins. And there is no fancy reason why I went to Cummins. It was very easy. They sponsored me with an H-1B visa. And my wife, or who was my girlfriend at the time, and is now my wife, also found a job there. So they made our decision very, very easy. This was an Indianapolis-based job, or I should say Columbus, Indiana-based job. So we were initially not excited to go there. It ended up being one of the best decisions of our lives. And my whole point there was, this was my first real engineering job. that's the dimension I wanted to grow in. I wanted to really understand what does it mean to be an engineer in an enterprise in the US from a product development standpoint. So I did a lot from an engineering standpoint, both in service engineering, service development, and throughout that work, I actually got my first exposure to what honestly became my first real passion, which is I got exposed to data analytics, electronics, and the cloud. And that frankly, as soon as I started messing with analytics, playing with data, that really became an obsession for me. And I did that for my last 2 years in Cummins, and eventually I decided to start my MBA at Indiana University. At that point, for me, I just wanted to solidify my business skills, really make sure that I understand how to run a business. And through my MBA, I found a company called Driven Data, which was a technology startup building data analytics solutions on top of the Microsoft cloud. And I led the sales. I led the sales team there, and I was an account executive there for that tech startup for a year and a half. Throughout throughout that time, I eventually got contacted by Microsoft, and Microsoft said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody that has your exact experience and can do what you're doing today in a startup world in an enterprise space with a potential to grow into a sales manager." And that was super appealing to me because the area that I wanted to grow in was enterprise sales with technology, with a path to become a manager and a leader. And again, so for me, it's always been a decision of where can I grow. There's a dimension that I'm trying to grow in. How can I get uncomfortable, get to a role that allows me to do that? And I should say another thing that's very interesting that I definitely want you to pick up on, or that I always highlight, is I've typically done the role after my existing role, even before I have even moved. So, for example, within Cummins, I was in the service engineering world. Okay, I was a service engineering manager, and then I moved to the analytics, IoT, data space. Okay, I was actually doing both roles for about a year because I was very interested on this side, but there were no openings, no open positions. And so I ended up doing both roles almost for free as an above and beyond. But it gave me the resume and the expertise that I needed for me to go eventually get the full time role and say, "Hey, I've got this experience. I've been doing it for a year. I've been doing it for 6 months, and I am the best qualified candidate for this." So again, be clear on what you're looking for. My career journey is super unconventional. I started as an engineer. I've done engineering leadership. This was at the enterprise level. I then went into into the startup level on a sales role completely, and now back at the enterprise level with a mixed sales and technical role. The biggest thing here for everybody that's listening is your engineering degree is going to be super valuable. Engineering degrees teach you how to learn and being resourceful, and those are things that are going to be invaluable for you in your career. So that's a little bit about how kind of what my career journey looks like. And I'm hoping that that helps you understand, hey, there's no one career path. You just got to be clear on what you're looking for and what your different career journeys could be. So I'm going to pause there for a second, Rishab. Any questions, any comments, or we're good to keep going?
So far, we're good, but I mean, if anyone has any questions, they can always put it on the YouTube chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Rishab. So here's my last one here that I want to make sure we touch on. So I I wanted to get tactical. I know all of you are in the career journey right now, either job searching or will be job searching very soon. There's three things that today I lead a team of 11 sellers, data and analytics sellers that work with about 2,200 customers in the East US space at Microsoft to embrace our cloud solutions around data platform and analytics. So I am exposed to, I've been exposed to the job search market, to the job market, both as a user when I was trying to find the job as an international student, and now as Microsoft, I'm actively hiring people and always looking to hire people. I can tell you there's three things that I see with the people that really excel at the job search game. Number one, they are the most proactive. And if I had to boil down the number one key for success, to really having success in your job search, job hunt, it's be proactive. And I think there's four things that I specifically see that really separate the best from the rest. Number one, this is a given, but I literally screened through 50 resumes this week. And I could tell you out of those 50, probably 45 were not even tailored to the specific position that I'm hiring for. So think about that for a second. 90% of these resumes were not tailored to the resume. So if you're hearing this, if you're ever applying for a job, make sure your resume is tailored. Make sure that people understand that you're interested specifically in that company, specifically in that job. The second thing is leverage LinkedIn. This is how I found the job that I've got today at Microsoft. Is I literally got reached out by a recruiter that in LinkedIn, and they said, "Hey, your background sounds super appealing. We love your experience. Can we have a conversation?" And I can tell you, I, as a hiring manager, have responded to people with very interesting backgrounds that just cold reach out to me to LinkedIn through LinkedIn and say, "Hey, Carlos, we want to, I've got this level of background. I love Microsoft. Are you open to having a quick career conversation?" I take those all the time because I love people who are, ambitious, who really are determined and just put themselves out there, and they're clear on what they're looking for. So LinkedIn is your best friend in the job search. Uh, from an interview standpoint, proactive people bring a point of view. They bring a visual. If you want to separate yourself, I don't see this. I almost never see an early career graduate student or an early career recent professional that just graduated bring a proactive presentation or bring a proactive point of view to my interviews. When they do, I typically hire them because it demonstrates that this is a very proactive person that has a point of view, that has been thoughtful about what to bring to the table, and that will add value from day one. So if you want to differentiate yourself from the pack as an early career professional, bring a visual, bring a PowerPoint, bring a point of view, bring a Word document, bring something that helps the company and the hiring manager see that you've put thought and you understand what you would be doing if you were doing the role. And finally, I cannot tell you how often I've got people who will interview with me and they have no idea what team, what job they're interviewing for. If you're talking to a if you're talking to a recruiter, if you're talking to a hiring manager, you absolutely have to know who you're talking to, what team you're applying for, what jobs are interesting to you. That's how you maximize your chances of success. Otherwise, you go into a pool and it's not as effective as it can be. So being proactive, I cannot overstate. If you forget everything else that I've said in this discussion, in this quick presentation, being proactive was a game changer for me. It was a game changer for me when I did stretch assignments in my previous roles. It was a great thing for me and a game changer for me when I was the most prepared in my interviews, and it was a game changer for me even when it allowed me to hire the best people because they were the most proactive. The second thing is, this is an obvious one. You get this one from absolutely everybody, but I'm going to keep reminding you of it. Leverage your network. Network, network, network. And here's what I will tell you. I actually think of the word networking differently from everybody else. Networking is not go and shake hands and have a drink with somebody. Networking is identify ways to add value to people in your network, okay? Or leverage your network to get the experience that you need to strengthen your resume, to strengthen your candidacy to a specific job, to really be the most qualified candidate for a job. If you do those three things, if you leverage your network to build the right experience, to build the right expertise, and if you leverage your network to add value, you're going to be top of mind. Everybody's going to be proactively thinking of you. And then finally, there's three basic skills that I look for in everybody. I don't care if you graduated yesterday, and I don't care if you're an international student or if you graduated 20 years ago and you're, from here, I really don't care. There's three things that you absolutely have to have. One, executive presence. And that shows up in your preparation, in your approach, in your communication, in the level of conversation that you're having. If you show up as, quote unquote, winging it, that's not a winning strategy. You want to be, I had a mentor that always said, it doesn't matter if you're the smartest person in the room. It matters that you're the most prepared. And when you're the most prepared, you can have a better executive conversation. You can think more strategically. You can add more value. And then there's a big modern philosopher that I always follow, Naval Ravikant, that is amazing. And he always says you can boil the business world to T skills. Are you either able to build, are you able to sell, or are you able to do both? And if you pause on that for a second and think about the power of, hey, as engineers, we are in a very unique position where we can both build and learn how to sell. And sell doesn't mean become a seller, become a salesperson. What it means is the ability to communicate, to be proactive, to identify new opportunities, to drive new business. That's what the ability to sell means. And from an ability to build standpoint is, can you be resourceful? Can you be creative? Can you create great products? Bring fantastic ideas. Every time that I'm interviewing somebody, I'm looking for somebody who can excel at the basic skills, executive presence, and they can build, or can they sell? And if they can do both, that's an ace. That's a person that's going to be massively successful. If they can both code a new application that's going to solve a big business or personal problem, and they can be fantastic at selling it, that's ultimately what I want from the perfect candidate. And finally, important just to close, target the right companies. If you're an international student, for example, everything that I said today is 100% applicable, and it's going to be the reason for your success. But if you're applying at the wrong company, if you're applying for jobs that don't even sponsor, then it doesn't matter. You're just talking to the wrong people. So do your homework behind the scenes, identify and say, hey, here's the companies that sponsor, here's the companies that are looking for people within my skill set, and then look back at the last 20 minutes of discussions that we've had, or the 20 minutes of presentation that I've had, and think about how you can apply all of these to these right companies. So that's really all that I have from my standpoint. There's no silver bullet. There's nothing here that earth shattering. It really goes down to the basics. It really goes back to understanding where you want to get to, what your guiding principles are. There's no one path. Your path is going to have your own, it's going to be your own. You can form it. There's no right path. It's just the one that you choose. And then from a job search standpoint, I would not boil the ocean. If you focus on these three things, okay, or I guess 3+1, and you apply that every single time you're applying for a job, or every single time you're looking for a job, I can guarantee you your chances of success are going to be higher. So thank you. I'll open to any questions that you may have. I wanted to keep this short because if I talk for more than 20 minutes, you're going to forget everything. So at least hopefully something's going to stick. So Rishab, I'm going to pause here for, stick around for a few minutes if we've got any questions. I'm happy to do a Q&A, address any questions that we've got.
Okay, so we've got one question from Tamara, and she says, can you go more into having a visual at an interview? What would that look like for a Microsoft specialist or tech consultant?
Yeah, so that's a great point, right? So for example, if I'm interviewing for a Microsoft specialist role, and I know that my role as a Microsoft specialist is I'm going to work with clients to help them understand how my technology can help them solve business problems. So for example, if I'm talking to a manufacturing company, I'm going to be helping them understand how, if they want to reduce idle time for manufacturing plant equipment, how technology can help them achieve that world. So for example, a visual that I would have is I would, for example, bring just one slide And that one slide could be for manufacturing, desired business outcome. And my desired business outcome is going to be I want to improve utilization of my manufacturing plant equipment. And then I'm going to say, cost justification or cost impact is every dollar that this machine's not running, in average, if I do a quick Google search, is $100,000 per year, or $100,000 per hour, or $100,000 per month. And then I would have a third piece that says Microsoft technologies that can help you achieve this business outcome. And I could highlight the Azure cloud, I could highlight the Dynamics 365 cloud, and I could highlight our data platform and analytics platform. This is going to be, not the best answer, but the fact that you brought something to the table proactively is immediately going to separate you from the rest. So that's an example of what I would bring to a Microsoft specialist interview. Is I would have a point of view around a specific industry business outcome, how we see that business outcome impacting the customer company, and how Microsoft technologies and solutions can help address that specific pain point and strategically drive growth for the customer. Rishab, any other questions?
Yeah, so we got another question from Anirudh, and he says, regarding interviews, are there psychological elements of the interviews?
That I would say always. Everything. So that's a great. I love that question. Always, everything that you do, every single interaction, from dating to selling to being an engineer, to everything that you do has a psychological action. I would say there's two things from an interview standpoint that are very, very important. You want to be clear and concise in your communication. You want to be confident in the way that you come across. Being confident in the way that you come across is extremely important. When you see people shaking and hesitating, that can be a problem. And the best way, if you're naturally shy, if you're a natural introvert, like many of us engineers are, the best way for you to do that is prepare, 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 prepare. The more you can prepare, the more comfortable you're going to be. And the more comfortable that you're going to be, the more confident that you're going to come across. So I would say, from a psychological standpoint, number one is just have the confidence. And number two, people gravitate to leaders. And leaders doesn't mean being loud. It doesn't mean talking the most. Leaders are people who understand where they are, and they show you a path forward. So being action oriented in the interview, and what I mean by that is, if your interviewer is asking you a question, and like make some interaction, right? If an interview is answering a question, and you asking you a question, and you answer the question, and you say, hey, does that make sense? You confirm with them that what you've said is aligned to your expectation and what they were looking for. That level of interaction, that level of leadership and control in what you're doing, where the interviewing feels like they're talking to an equal, where you're talking one-on-one with them, really sets you apart. So I would say, from a psychological standpoint, be confident and be a leader. If you're prepared and you're confident, you're going to come up as a leader. You're going to have a great conversation more than just an interview. And that's the best case scenario. So that's what I would address from a psychological standpoint.
Okay, and so we got another question from Ashima, and she says, I have a question how to proceed after you have applied and received no response from the company.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I get this question all the time. My immediate question to you would be, what does apply mean? And if apply means you only applied online, here's what I would have you think about. 150 people did exactly the same thing that you just did. So what are you going to do differently? Have you already searched LinkedIn for hiring managers, people at that company, and introduced yourself and asked if you could learn more about it and network within that team? Have you already thought proactively about, if I were to get the role that I'm applying for, what would I do in my first 30, 60, and 90 days, and put that in a quick 3-bullet paragraph where I could send that to a recruiter and that could really pick their attention? That would be my answer, right? Is what can you do, or what how to take if you haven't gotten a response. I would say that's very normal. There's hundreds of people that are just applying online, not doing anything else. But that's a great opportunity for you to separate yourself from the pack and be the best, be different, leverage LinkedIn, be proactive, and prepare for the job and almost have a point of view on the job before you even get the job.
All right, and we got another question, and it's what position at Microsoft would you say are the best fit for a CE major?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So for a CE major, there's a multitude of, I mean, there's many positions at Microsoft. There's ones that are specifically focused on undergraduates, and many times they open them as computer engineer undergraduate is typically the name of the opening. And that's a generic program that gets you almost into a development leadership program where you can start being exposed to different places or different things within Microsoft. So I would actually start with those undergrad or grad or graduate student generic early career positions, because they give you visibility and exposure to the different sides of the business. Aside from that, there's many positions around development, software engineering, computer engineering. Now, most of those are based in Seattle. So in Seattle, in Redmond, kind of in the mothership, in the headquarters. But obviously, Microsoft being the size of company that it is, we've got people all around the US, all around the world. So I would start with the generic undergrad or grad positions. Otherwise, I would look at software engineering, computer engineering positions in Seattle or in the major development hubs. And if you really want to stay in Dallas, there's a couple more junior positions that could be available. The best way for you to filter those out is if you go to the Microsoft career website. They, there's many that say early career. Those early career are going to be the best ones for you if you're just graduating from a CE standpoint.
Perfect. And another question is being extroverted a net positive in general for engineering?
I would actually not say that. I think you can be, I tell you, some of the best business leaders I've ever had are introverts. But here's the thing, like people people tend to confuse being extrovert with just talking a lot, talking out loud, being super decisive, driving. You can be very confident and be an introvert. In my mind, it all goes down to what your approach is. If you're proactive, if you're prepared, if you're confident, it doesn't matter if you get your energy from other people or from yourself, which is the key difference between extroverts and introverts. Is extroverts get energy from other people, introverts get energy from thinking, from meditating, from kind of being with themselves. That doesn't really matter. As long as you can be clear in your communication, you can be confident, you can be proactive, you can have a clear plan. It really doesn't matter. So if you ask me, is it a net positive? I would actually say no. I would say you can be equally successful as an introvert or as an extrovert in any role, as long as you're following the principles for success, right? As long as you're adding a ton of value, being confident, having a plan, having a point of view, and driving an impact.
Okay, and we've got another question. How useful is a master's degree, in particular an MBA?
Can you repeat that again, please?
How useful is a master's degree, in particular an MBA?
That's a great question. This is going to be recorded, so I got to be careful. It is. I learned a lot of basics that I would not have had the opportunity, or I would not have invested the time to learn. So here's the thing. Could I have learned everything that I learned in the master's if I had not done the master's? Yes, 100%. Especially with an MBA, you just have to go to YouTube. YouTube has every class that you could imagine. I could have taken every class that I could have taken in my MBA and just look them up in YouTube and get them. But here's the question: would I have prioritized the time and made the time to do that and made the time investment to do that? The answer is probably no. The MBA forced me to really dig in and identify and figure out, hey, these are the things that I'm going to learn, put a plan around them, prioritize them, make the time for it, and learn them. So that's one thing. It forced me to spend the time. It forced me to invest the time. It gave me the basics. Then the second thing is it did give me invaluable relationships. There's people from my MBA that I still talk to, every month, and they are fantastic people. I've learned a ton from them, and those are relationships that I would not have had otherwise. So, is it worth it? Debatable. Depends on what you're looking for. Do I regret doing it? No, absolutely not. I think it was incredibly valuable to me, and I think it gave me the basics that I needed, and it also gave me relationships that I cherish and are amazing. So there's no right answer, no silver bullet. That's just my perspective.
Okay. And the same person asked, how does an MBA look when trying to apply for a job?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I would say depending on the job, right? So for example, for my role, I'm looking for sales leaders. I'm not necessarily looking at MBA or not MBA. It's not a thing that's a priority for me. But you've got people that are looking for very high level operations leaders or business leaders, not on the sales side, just generic business leaders around marketing or operations or you name it, and they could be specifically looking for an MBA. So I would tell you, it's never going to hurt you. I'm never not going to hire somebody because they have an MBA. It can only help you from a career standpoint. But depending on where you're going to apply, it may be needed or it may not be needed. The truth is, I've got many roles, like all the roles that I'm hiring for right now. I it's not necessarily a factor for me. It's not something that I'm looking for. But there's many roles at Microsoft that tell you required qualification, you got to have a 4-year MBA. So it really depends on the job, depends on what you want to do. Now, I'll tell you again, it will never hurt you. It will never hurt you to have an MBA.
I think that's it for questions. Um,
Awesome.
so
All
far.
right. No, I'm excited. Rishab and team, thank you for the invitation. I hope that it was valuable. I hope everybody got some value and some ideas out of it, and I really appreciate it. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great one. Bye.